Hey y'all, Big Ed, Dr. Big Ed. So I just want to do something really interesting here. This will be more of a hear, tell, try it and practice sort of thing. So there's this plugin, it's called Smart EQ by Sonable, right? You can get a good look at it there. Let me make it bigger. Let's make it big. It's pretty big. So that's it. Now, excuse me, what this does is it's an AI, it's an artificial intelligence EQ. What does that mean? Well, you press this button up here and it listens to your track and it makes corrections based on what it's hearing. Sounds good, right? Yeah. And frankly, there's been a couple of mixes where I put it on the mix bus and it just finished it and it was perfect and it added precisely what I needed. And you can drag down this dome to make it less. You can also adjust the individual frequencies. But the idea is it's giving you what you lack. So like I said, it worked a couple times perfectly on the mix bus. After that, not so much. So that particular source, and this is a key for recording and audio, professional audio, is it isn't always going to work all the time. Well, but shouldn't it? I mean, that's what it's for. Well, yeah, it's source dependent. And the type of stuff that I'm doing, free improvisation, mostly at home, especially since the lockdown, it was not taking away, but it was putting in too much, so much that I couldn't correct it with the parameters. But this is the trick I learned, and maybe you can use this if you have this plugin or are thinking about getting it. It's a linear phase EQ, I might add. So it's AI linear phase. Now, you have to be careful with linear phase. In general, it's mostly used for fixing problems, really good ones anyway. And I have some really, really super duper killer ones for mastering. But here's the trick. What I've learned of this, the best way for me to use it, and I still try it on the mix bus every time, and there has been another occasion recently where it worked, but here's where it works the best. Okay, so you can see what my settings are here, right? That's what it did after listening, okay? Put it on the mix bus. Let's do that. So this will sound crazy because I don't even know if I used this particular track, but I'm just using, I don't know if I ended up using this, but this is for our discussion purposes here. So here's what we got going. Right? Some crazy synthy thing. I just got a micro freak, an Arturia micro freak. So anyway, so let's take the smart EQ and put it on the master bus, and I will turn it on, and you'll basically hopefully be able to hear it. On. Off. So I don't know if you heard that, but it just like magnified certain frequencies as well as nicely, took away from certain areas that were problems, but it magnified certain frequencies, brought up some distortion, too much low end. So here's the trick I learned. So I'm going to grab this from my master bus, and I'm going to put it on another bus that I call mix, right? It's an auxiliary track, right? An auxiliary mix track. Just like you would have an auxiliary drum track guitars, whatever, just to do a little fine tweaking before final mix down. So, and I have bus 7/8 going to that mix auxiliary track, and all the other tracks in my mix that are active, right, are all going the same amount, minus 9.4 dB, to the mix bus with the Smart EQ. Now, here's where we get fancy. So I'm going to start playing with the Smart EQ disabled on the mix bus, and then I'll bring it in and maybe you'll hear, it'll be subtle, but it'll be cool. Off. On. Off. On. So, what is that doing? Well, it artificially intelligency read the tracks on the master bus, right? It didn't work there for me, so I put it on this auxiliary track, fed the rest of the tracks to it, and what it was doing, I don't know if you can hear it through the interweb, but what it's doing is it's just adding a little bit of body and character and taking away, it's sculpting the parts. So what I was hearing before I activated it was, the track was cool, but it was a little hollow in certain frequency range, but it also needed a little more bump in the low end, but I didn't want to do that on the individual tracks because it got a little overwhelming. So, you let the Smart EQ read the mix, put it on a bus, and then not only can you control the amount that those tracks go to that Smart EQ bus, but you can also bring the bus up and down in your mix to taste. So that's just a little tip on using Smart EQ. I also have another AI EQ, Gullifos, but Gullifos is much less intrusive. It's more of a sweetener on the end. I like the idea, but I think if you have Smart EQ or you're thinking of getting it, this is another way to use it without having it overwhelm things some of the time. You might just use it as a little character balance in your mix, just to give you that body and a little bit of sculpting and a little bit of definition without, going in a direction you don't like. All right? All right. Cool. See you next time.